Throughout the course of 2024, I'm going to be doing decades so far list style videos. If you haven't caught any of them so far, make sure you do, because I have done tier lists on the rap albums of the 2020 so far, and also rap songs, and there's going to be plenty more of those to come throughout the year. But today's video, we're looking at rock albums throughout the course of the 2020s. We're thereabouts-ish halfway through the decade, if we're looking at it from 2020 all the way to 2029. It's kind of crazy. We're getting there, and I thought it'd be fun to talk you guys through some of the best that have come out in this decade so far. So make sure you subscribe to stick around for more. And today's video, we're looking at the best rock albums throughout the 2020s. Yes, we're going to be looking at different genres and all that. It's going to be great, so you got to stick around for more. As ever, make sure you're letting me know what your favourites of the decade so far are in the comments, because there'll be some that I don't mention that you'll be thinking of, and there'll be some that you'll be like, how can you not include this? And it's, well, you know, it is just my opinion, and I might like the album anyway, but we're talking about the 10 best. We're looking at 10. It's a very low number. It's not many at all, so we're really having to narrow it down to the best of the best in the rock genre. Starting with a little mini honourable mention, because I did initially include it in my 10, but I listened to it and I thought, well, it kind of blends different styles together. It's got a bit of folk-tronica, it's got a bit of an indie-tronica. You know, there are different styles mishmashing together, and I didn't want to cause too much confusion with the genre label of rock, but A Cloudy Sky really do have one of the best albums of the decade so far. It is so magnificent. Some of the tracks really go meandering in all these different directions. I think post-rock fans are going to absolutely love this one, but some of these tracks like Safety are just mesmerizing. They really do lock you in a trance. I cannot get enough of that album, but like I say, difficult to kind of pinpoint it into just rock on its own. So a mini honourable mention for you there before we get onto the list. And just for the record, by the way, I'm not going to be putting this in any particular order. I don't think there's any point doing that yet. We'll save the ordering for the end of the decade. But for now, we're just going to get 10 albums and give you what I think are the best. Yeah, let's go. You're taking me back. Jack White, Fear of the Dawn. Honestly, a bit of a career saver, this one. Look, I know I might be in the slight minority, although it did get a bit of a mixed reception, but the album before this one, I've grown to appreciate what it's going for, but I never really fully found myself absolutely loving it. But Fear of the Dawn turned things around, and it kind of blended some of the experimental ideas that was going on with previous Jack White solo work, and just kind of streamlined it and put it in a bit more of a palatable way that I thought ended up being really fun, really exciting. Some of the guitars are absolutely riffy as hell. Some of the tracks are just bonkers with how far they go with the ideas. It's so adventurous, taking me back as an absolute rager. Just some of the best rock songs, some of the most exciting rock songs of the entire decade. There's a track with Q-Tip on it. I mean, this is why I like Jack White. He's just so willing to go above and beyond to try something a little weird, a little quirky, and yet on this album it paid off massively. Some of the best work I think he's ever done throughout his entire career land on this album. That even includes the White Stripes work as well. Yes, I would go as far to say that. Love this album. I think it's easily in the conversation of being one of the best rock albums of the 2020 so far, and I couldn't not include it. Yves Tumor, Heaven to a Tortured Mind. You could mention a couple of Yves Tumor albums actually, and I wouldn't be mad at which one you picked. For me though, this one has just lived with me for years now. I mean, obviously it's only like 4 years old, but when I first listened to it, I liked it a lot, thought it was really good, gave it a really positive review, and then I kept going back to it, and I was like, man, this album is just not leaving me. It won't go away. I just had the urge to sit through all of these fantastic tracks. You've got friggin' the opening track, which is excellent. It's like TV on the radio had a collaboration with Gorillaz or something. It's just so bloody good, that song. One of the best songs of the decade for me so far. Then you've got Medicine Burn. You've got Kerosene. one of the best like duets of the decade so far, just pulling from that like glam rock era in such a beautiful way. Like it just has such a lovely homage to those artsy rock, glam rock days of like the 70s. It's so good, but yet it puts it in such a modern way. And again, similar to Jack White, you know, Yves Tumor is no stranger to trying things, doing a little bit of oddities here and there, particularly towards the end of the album. But yeah, so much of this album just really strikes me in such a great way. What an artist Yves Tumor is. And like I say, there was the album from last year. If you include that in your list so far, I'm not going to get mad at you. It's just this one for me is the one that hits hard. The debut album from Courting has to be mentioned here as well. Really love this one. Super replayable, really short and straight to the point, and it's really fun. It pulls from some of the new wave of bands that are very much inspired by like the classic post-punk sound, that kind of windmill era of music that we're in right now. All those bands are jumping out and popping up left, right and centre, and I think Courting are one of the standout bands from that too, and provided such a really great album, really replayable, really exciting. You've got tracks like Tennis, which are really like sardonic and sarcastic, but really fun as well, and Jumper, man. Jumper is great. That is one of the catchiest pop rock tracks of the whole decade so far. Saw these guys live as well. They absolutely killed it. Yeah, I'm really excited for Courting to go even further in their career, because they've got a couple of albums under their belt so far. This one for me is the one that stands out the most. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing where they take their sound, because I think they can stick around and continue to drop really good albums like this. Chelsea Wolfe, on the complete opposite end of the scale to any album mentioned so far. Chelsea Wolfe gave us one of the most thrilling and gripping and just atmospheric and chilling albums of the decade so far. Like, it really is more in that kind of gothic lane that we've known Chelsea Wolfe to do for her entire career. But one of the interesting things about this album is the blend of like industrial rock that comes in, particularly on tracks like the second track on the album, which is one of the best on the whole thing. Like so exciting, so jarring, so odd and creepy at times. But yeah, it's not exactly traditional just rock, you know, your typical guitars and like like it's not that kind of rock album, but it really is bloody good. It's only been out a few months, but I do think this will be up there by the end of the decade as one of the best rock albums of the 2020s for sure. Black Midi, was telling you about those windmill acts a little earlier on when I was talking about Courting. Black Midi are very much the front runners of that, and very much the most ballistic and balls to the wall bands that we have out of this entire scene right now. I know people might have gone with Cavalcade, but for me, Hellfire is easily their best album so far to date. I'd even put it above Schlagenheim, actually. I think it's fantastic. These so many brilliant songs that are just so odd and like weird, but yet feels so purposeful. It's not just for the sake of it. The storytelling on some of these tracks is fantastic. The guitar playing is excellent. The drumming, I mean, this drummer has got to be one of the best drummers around in the world. Like, seriously, the drumming is ridiculous on this album, and just one of the most bonkers and exciting bands out of the UK at the moment. I totally see that they're not exactly for everybody, and some people might just turn away from it and be a bit like, no, this isn't for me at all. I think it's a bit too weird. I'm not even going to judge you for that. But I think when you're on board and when you're in the know with these guys and you really embrace what they're doing, they are just so exciting and so exhilarating in the best kind of way. You know the truth in what they say. The world's gonna kick you either way. Spanish love songs. This has got to be like top 3 of the decade so far if I was to put this in a ranking. Oh my god, Brave Faces, everyone. One of the most heartfelt and passionate and just so like thoughtful and interesting albums of the decade so far, like in terms of how this singer presents living in the modern world and how kind of capitalism has consumed us, and having to live paycheck to paycheck and never really being fully happy with where you are in life, and never really feeling like you're fulfilled, and never really feeling like you're secure with yourself and financially and everything. Just brilliant insight to how what it really is like for the everyday person, the everyday man, I suppose you could say, who is just doing everything they can to work hard, but it never really pays off. It's just such a brilliant album, man. Really wonderful insight into mental health and living through poverty. It just is fantastic. It is more of a pop punk album, but I wanted to loosen that genre term a little bit for this ranking, because they had to be in here. It is just one of the best rock albums of the decade so far. Fantastic stuff. Shame with Drunk Tank Pink, another band from this British post-punk scene at the moment. This wave of bands are really coming through, and I've really enjoyed a lot of them. I know some people have said some of it's getting a little stale, but I think this album was very much the opposite of that. It was really much a great, like, lightning in a bottle moment for this band to really come through in their own sound and just pull it off brilliantly. Like tracks like Nigel Here, Born in Luton as well is fantastic, and then of course you've got Snow Day, which is one of the most relentless songs that they've put out ever. It really translated well live when I saw them, so another band that are really ones to watch if you catch them anywhere playing near you. Absolutely recommend them in the same way I would Courting as well. Like really highly recommend them, because I think once you see it live, I think it makes the studio recordings sound even better, because you're like, oh man, I can see their vision, I can see what they're trying to do, I can see where they're going for with these tracks and how they approach them in a live setting. It's absolutely brilliant. But even regardless, a great album in its own right. Some of their best songs land on this one. Very much indebted to the classic post-punk sound in a way that some of the other bands have kind of strayed away from, that I've mentioned in this video particularly. Like, they've put their own spin on it a bit more, whereas these guys are very much like classic in their approach, but it's still really great. Yeah, there were some think pieces coming through about Last Dinner Party, weren't they, when they burst onto the scene, about how they're an industry plant and all this, that and the other. Whether they are or not, I don't really mind as long as the music's great, and I actually think they absolutely delivered with this album. This album is as good as I could have hoped. It is just fantastic. They pull from theatrical sounds of Baroque pop. You know, it's not just exactly, strictly a rock album, but there's enough rock elements on this album to certainly make it onto this list. If that sentence even made any sense at all, though, whatever I just tried saying there. But yeah, really great stuff. You got Caesar, you got friggin' Nothing Matters, just anthemic tracks, fantastically performed. The vocals are super theatre kid, but in the best kind of way, in a way that's not annoying whatsoever. Yeah, I absolutely love what they're doing on this album. Very much classic sounds of like Florence and the Machine coming through with maybe some like Marina and the Diamonds kind of combined to create this really over the top theatrical sound that just makes this album sound so huge, full of life. So many great lyrics and song ideas on this album too, touching on like societal norms and perceptions. It's really great stuff. Honestly, I think if you were to write this off just because you were sick of seeing them plastered everywhere before they even put an album out, you'd be doing yourself a little bit of a disservice. They really do deserve your ears, because this is really great stuff. I also feel like maybe some Black Country New Road influence pops up on this album too. Yeah, great stuff. I can see my house from here. Gene Dawson, Chaos Now, another one that I think might be in my top 3 of the decade so far in terms of rock. This is just so anthemic, and one that I keep going back to constantly. Yes, I think it's better than Pixel Bath, and I think it is actually rockier than Pixel Bath too. I think he really embraced a bit more of that guitar. Some of these tracks are really, really fiery, and his delivery is perfect for it too. He's just got such a great charismatic voice. The hooks go on and stick in your head for days. Absolutely love the youthful energy on this album. So many incredible tracks. There's an Earl Sweatshirt friggin' feature, man. What a random collab that is, but it works so bloody well. Excellent stuff. The final track embraces some like Irish classic sounds too. Oh, it's so good. The whole thing, it just makes you want to listen to it over and over again because it's super short, super punchy, straight to the point. Really creative with how he approaches these tracks as well. Definitely up there, one of the best rock albums of the decade for sure. My 10th and final pick, but in no way is this bad to be last, because Friko for me have one of the best albums of the decade so far in terms of rock music. Love their approach here. Very much classic, like 90s, early 2000s influence coming through. Some Midwest emo with the lyrics as well. The lyrics are really, really interesting when you read into them. The way the tracks are recorded, I think, sounds good. It's got a bit of a grainy, lo-fi quality, but I think it sounds fantastic. Yeah, really out of nowhere surprise, this one for the year 2024. Another one from just this year that's only been out a few months, but I'm pretty confident in including it in a decade list like this because it just is one that's sticking with me and feels super nostalgic. It feels like I've had this album for years, and yet it doesn't feel like it's just ripping anybody off, or it doesn't feel like it's just, you know, taking the sounds from other eras and not doing anything interesting with it, because I think that can be a really boring thing when bands just sound like somebody else from 2 decades or 3 decades or 4 decades ago. And if you feel that way about Friko, fair enough, but I actually think they do enough to differentiate themselves from the classics. I think it's great. And these are my 10 rock albums of the decade so far that I think are absolutely up there with the very, very best. Of course, it's just my opinion. You'll probably be thinking, where's this, where's that? I did mention Black Country New Road in the video, and actually my favourite work of theirs this decade was the Live at Bush Hall album, which I don't really think you can traditionally call a rock album anyway. It's a lot of chamber pop and stuff, so tricky to really include them, but I know some people will be shouting at me saying, why don't you have Ants From Up There? I like it, but it just doesn't quite land in the top 10 for me so far. Let me know your thoughts on these picks. So check out my Patreon as well if you want to support me over on there. Keeps the videos going, keeps the channel alive. If you want to see me living, that would be lovely. that would be pretty good. you probably do want to see me living, right, guys? Come on. Check out that. Support me over on there. That'd be wonderful. You get some perks too. Subscribe, at the very least. Subscribe. You got to subscribe and stick around for more. And drop your lists in the comments. Have a good day. Goodbye.